Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to talk today about two people opposed to the Colombia Free Trade Agreement. Alejandro Jose Peñata, a teacher, a union organizer, a spokesperson for fairness for his fellow educators in a country where getting a decent education can be difficult to impossible. And also, I want to talk about Ana Fabricia Córdoba, an advocate for the displaced, an advocate for returning stolen land to those from whom it was taken. Ana and Alejandro were part of a vocal and committed and brave group of Colombians willing to stand up for what they believed in. They stood up for the dispossessed and for presence, for trade union members and for those who wanted to join trade unions. Like many Colombians, they were tremendously concerned about a free trade agreement that reflected the interests of large corporations, but not those of workers and farmers and poor people that fought every day. Ana and Alejandro, if they could, would be with us today to voice their opposition in person to the Colombia Free Trade Agreement. But they can't voice that opposition because they were both murdered in Colombia. Ana was shot dead on a public bus. Alejandro was tortured and hung with barbed wire. These are tragic facts, uncomfortable facts, unacceptable facts, but they are not isolated facts. Sadly, the faces of Ana and Alejandro are the faces of Colombia today. Nowhere in the world is it more dangerous to be a union organizer fighting for wages and rights for working people than in Colombia. 23 trade unionists were killed this year. 51 were killed last year. And over the last several years, hundreds more have been threatened, driven out by violence, or simply disappeared. In 2010, more trade unionists were murdered in Colombia than in the rest of the world combined. In Colombia, there is an organized, intense campaign to prevent working men and women from working together to fight for better wages and working conditions. And it seems to be working. So why would the United States want to endorse this behavior and reward companies working with the government who have unleashed this violent assault on workers' rights? That, after all, is what a trade agreement is really about. A partnership. This is not a partnership the United States of America should enter into. I'm voting no on the Colombia Free Trade Agreement. I urge my colleagues to vote no on the Colombia Free Trade Agreement. I believe the facts are simple. Voting for the Colombia Free Trade Agreement is a vote for violent union busting, for driving people from their land, for setting the American working man and women up to compete on an unlevel playing field that will cost us jobs and livelihoods. I know that it is difficult to look at the pictures and hard to accept the reality of danger to people who speak up in Colombia. But we cannot ignore the facts. And in Colombia, trade union activists are targeted for assassination and murder. That's not easy fact to accept, but it's a fact. Approving the free trade pact with Colombia says that the United States can live with this fact. It brings the blood of union activist victims from Bogota to Washington. That blood won't be easily washed away. Let's think about the movements for freedom happening in Cairo and Damascus and Tripoli. We applaud them. We congratulate the protesters. The union leaders in Wisconsin and Ohio and Puerto Rico who stand up for their rights against oppressive state governments. My Democratic colleagues, they applaud those workers. When angry Tea Partiers bash our government and talk about individual rights, my Republican colleagues applaud them. Well, today we have a chance to do more than applaud. We can stand with people who are standing up for freedom in Colombia. I suggest that everyone in the House who has ever celebrated, applauded, or supported a popular pro-democracy movement in the U.S. or abroad think long and hard before they vote yes on the Colombia Free Trade Agreement. Because what we see is what we get when it comes to free trade in Colombia. We get a partnership with a country where speaking your mind is a death sentence. I want free trade, but I'm for an agreement that builds commerce while protecting workers and environment and the rights of farmers and men. There is not that agreement. This is an agreement that turns a blind eye to violence and oppression and injustice. So I ask my colleagues to do what Alejandro and Ana, who were murdered, cannot do. Say no to FTA with Colombia.